Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or whatever time of day it is. This is the first episode of, wait for it, Joy for a Lifetime. That's right, Joy for a Lifetime. And who doesn't want joy? So, what is this all about? It's about marriage and relationships, how you can have a successful marriage. You are going to learn everything you need to know so you too can have a successful marriage, like my friends here, Eric and Kim. Well, that's not true because there is no magic key to success. Not to say that their marriage isn't successful, but I would be misleading you, lying if I were to make it seem like this is going to have all the answers because people are involved in marriage and people aren't perfect. They mess up.
Mm.
But I think that marriage is pretty important. I think it can be pretty remarkable. And I think that in a perfect world, marriage brings joy for a lifetime, happily ever after. Just like those lifetime movies that lots of ladies like to watch. So, what are
I
we
know.
going to do here today? What are you going to learn? Well, I don't know. One of the things you are going to learn is about my friends, Kim and Eric Baker. Thank you, Kim and Eric. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Say hi.
Hi guys.
Thank you for having us,
Y'all
Claudia,
look
and trusting us.
fuzzy.
Well, it's
Y'all
okay.
look fuzzy.
Well,
No,
I'll
it's
tell you this.
not. It looks like
It's
y'all are
going to
from
be okay.
like you're UFOs or something like I've channeled you here. Kim, Eric, come,
Mm.
come.
Mm. Mm.
Mm.
Well,
Oh,
if I could tell you a technical thing, Claudia, it's okay because on the back end, it's going to look great.
Yeah.
Riverside does a great job. I promise you. They're uploading a lower um,
Resolution.
resolution,
quality. Oh, resolution. Okay.
and
All
then
right.
you'll get a
Fine,
better one
fine.
online. See?
Okay. All right.
So as long as
Well,
the audio
thank you
is
for
good, we're
sharing
good.
that. Here is what I want you all to do is introduce yourselves. Where are you from? Are you married? How long have you been married?
Mm.
Okay. We are Eric and Kim Baker. I was born and raised in Tampa, Florida. We've been married for 17 years. You want to say where you're from?
Happily married, honey.
Happily married. Where are you from?
Originally Syracuse, New York. Went down to how old was I?
2000.
2001. 23 years ago? 24 years ago. That long ago, I moved down. You can tell I've been in Florida for that long. So
Mhm. That's
we got our
us.
daughter right here.
So you've been married for 17 years, happily married, you say. Do you have children? Do you have family members? Do you have pets? Tell us a little more.
More. Okay. We have 4 children here with us and 3 in heaven. We have our son Jacob, who is 14. Alana is 13. Ariana is 8. And Danny Jane is 1. She's behind us. We have a German Shepherd, Max. And we have Benny, who is a Chihuahua rescue. It's the best I got.
I'm so
And
sorry.
6
Oh, wait.
kittens. We have 6
You
And a
have
kittens.
hamster.
kittens.
Yes.
Hold on, baby. Over here.
My daughter
There you
rescued them from the
There you
backyard.
go.
And we have a hamster. We have a whole farm.
Named Cookie.
Do you have turtle and fish?
No,
Maybe.
no, we don't.
You're on the pond.
I would love a lizard one day, like a bearded
Like a
dragon.
fancy leopard gecko.
Oh, that
That's
is
how I
not the
felt.
secret to a happy marriage for everyone. Let me just go on record. If I were married or when I was married, I'm a widow, and my husband had any idea of bringing some lizard or any type of reptile, that would have been the end of our happy relationship.
Wow. Wow.
I agree with you
That would have been a deep.
until I saw my cousins. He
Mhm.
was actually breeding them and selling them, and I was freaked out by them. But he put one on my leg, and it is the coolest feeling ever.
Yeah.
I don't like lizards outside.
No.
Definitely afraid of those. Like I will push somebody
And
if
you
it
grew
comes
up
near
here
me.
in Florida.
I did. I don't do iguanas like the really big ones or gators. None of those.
Even the little ones.
No, not even the little ones. I freak out.
Well, what I would like to know, as much as I'm fascinated by the animals you love and dislike, I want to know how you met. I'm thinking of this episode as Once Upon a Time. That's the beginning of the
Okay.
story.
I love that. Well, once upon a time, I was 16 the first time I laid eyes on him. And I had a crush right away. He had a blue button up shirt. His blue eyes looked popped, and I had a crush. But I was underage, so that we were just friends. Um, but fast forward 3 years, 2 years later, I was 18, had a really bad breakup, and Eric was the guy that was there, kind of putting the pieces back together as a friend. And we spent, what, 7 hours talking that night. And we just kind of realized that we were supposed to be together. And you want to talk about your list?
Yeah. I mean, if I go back to like prior to us getting together, it was a 2 year relationship, building it with her parents. We would attend the same like sessions, and I got to know them really well. And then as she had that breakup, she actually leaned on me because I saw she was actually hurting. Nobody was really talking to her. So I actually just thought, you know, if I could help.
Yeah.
And I had a list that I had created a year prior to that, because I was actually tired of the relationships that were just empty, full of things that I wasn't a part of, like the drug life, the club life, the drink, all this other life that I was tired of. I was trying to get away from, but I wanted stability. I wanted things that were, because I was a brand new Christian at that time, and I'm like, I want a wife that's going to be after Jesus on her own
Yep.
first.
And I had just received Jesus. I had just gotten saved
Right.
that year, like
Yeah.
maybe a few months prior.
Yeah,
And you were
and that was
18?
where my list came
I
from.
was 18. Yeah, I was really sick, and that led me to an altar call because I was tired of feeling sick, and I received healing that day, and I received Jesus that day.
Yeah.
And my life transformed. Literally, doctors can't explain it.
Yeah.
And so this list, we were sitting there talking in my car at the time, and he hands it to me, and I start reading this list of the description of what he wants in a wife, and it was me, which was kind of interesting to read on paper. But started from my relationship with Jesus. It's went down to that my parents were still married. Never done drugs, never was into drinking, took care of my body, wanted kids, animal lover. I mean, there was
personality.
4 pages of a description of what he wanted. There was 2 things, and I have to point them out. I don't have blue eyes. I have like dark hazel eyes, and I'm not 5'2". Those were the 2 that I did not qualify, but it's fine.
Okay.
So you met the majority. You think you probably still
Yeah.
got an A, like you were 98%.
Yes, 98%.
Well, I took it as God was trying to get me away from the physical. He wanted me to focus on the things that mattered, which obviously was her spiritual life, her heart, her personality, the things that I knew I wanted in a wife. I mean, there was a lot of other things in there, but the things that were just God written were ones that you just can't make up.
Yeah.
Like no divorce in the family. Like I came from a divorced family. She didn't. Parents are involved, but they're not like,
Hovering.
just in it. They trusted me. I mean, the whole thing is just started from that point, and it was almost like they were okay with it. And I'm like, this is all just working out too crazy. And I'm like, what do we do now?
Yeah.
I was like, do we like kiss?
I
I was like really just not sure. Nothing like this has ever happened before. So that's how it started.
We knew it was serious. I knew I had been in 2 really bad relationships to where it matured me, I would say, more than most 18-year-olds. I knew that he was supposed to be my husband. And it was, September 25th, 2005. And we never looked back. 6 months later, we were engaged. 6 months after that, we were married.
That's right.
So we knew.
Yeah.
It was-
It really is a
I
storybook
think it was
beginning.
important that you all apparently started out as friends.
I think it helped. I think it helped with familiarity. I knew what kind of guy he was. I didn't know a lot about his personal life of his family and stuff like that, but I knew how he acted in a group of friends. I knew
Yeah.
how he treated me. I knew a little bit of his story, and why he was in Florida versus New York. But I do think it helped because we had fun together. We would hang out in groups,
Yeah.
do different things. I mean, we didn't I don't think we ever hung out by ourselves prior to that. It was always in a group setting with all of our other friends.
Yeah.
And so I think it definitely helped us
Yeah.
build that foundation of what we both wanted in a marriage, was to have a best friend. And that is what we are even today.
Yeah. I remember we actually were outside Ted Michelle's house one time.
Yes. Yeah.
That was the first time we kind of talked separate.
Yeah.
So we actually talked for, I don't know, it wasn't very long, but it
No.
was like she was, asking me. I think you asked me advice or something. I don't
Yeah,
remember.
I can't remember,
But it
but
was just like that was our only time we ever did it. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
that was cool. It wasn't like anything like romantic
no,
or
it was just
anything.
friends.
I mean,
Yeah.
she was lusting after me, but it was
No.
So let me rewind a little bit back to when you first saw him, you had this crush.
Hmm.
And I know girls are different, I think, than males because it's really easy for us to get into a whole fantasy world. You see the right person and you can just imagine, and it
Yeah.
doesn't take a lot, it doesn't take, you don't have to know them well, but maybe you spend a little bit of time, or maybe you just saw them and you thought, wow, and you just imagine this whole life together. Even if you never really see each other again, you know what I mean? You have that whole fantasy
Hmm.
thing. Um, so I'm wondering how much that played into your friendship. I mean, when you were found that you all were hanging out together with the same friends, were did you have a part of your brain, Kim, that thought that maybe this is, remember, you don't know him that well,
Right.
that maybe this is the one, did you have any fantasies? Do you know what I mean? Not
Yeah,
fantasies
I know
like
what you mean.
weird kind of.
Yeah, I know. Um, yes. So when I first saw him, again, the blue shirt, the blue eyes, this smoking guy, I was like, wow, who is this
remember
guy?
she was 16.
I was, but that's fine. I was boy crazy. But then there's this girl who I thought was his girlfriend, which it wasn't. It was his friend. And I had that instant like jealousy twinge. And I was like, I've never gotten jealous like that before. And I didn't even know this guy. And so I was like, okay, that's something. And then the first time I met Dexter, his German Shepherd, I was like, okay, there's something there, because he was a puppy and I fell in love with him. And yeah, I
Him,
thought about
Dexter.
Dexter. And he was the best German Shepherd ever. He was just,
Yeah.
he was the best. But when I met him, I thought about like, oh, we could go to the dog park. We could do all these things. And because I knew how he felt about him, that it was his dog that he wanted and this whole thing. And yeah, I totally had that vision after I got over the jealousy part of this other girl. But it was definitely there for sure.
Yeah, and we did do that when
We
we
did.
started dating.
Mhm.
It was like one of the main things. Can you hear me okay? My microphone is off.
Yeah, I can hear you fine.
It's in here.
Yeah. We
That's
did
where
do that.
yeah.
That was one of our favorite things to do, was to take Dexter to the dog parks, and
Yeah.
he would.
And that was on my list about liking dogs. Oh, sorry, child. Sorry, Dad's safe.
For a moment, I thought he was pulling out the list. I thought, really? You have the list?
I do have it.
He still does have it. I don't think it's here, but we do have
It's
it.
definitely accessible, and
Mhm.
I got to show a couple other guys because
Move the
I
mic a
found
little
out.
closer, please.
Is
Can you hear me okay?
that better?
Sort of. Go ahead.
Actually, mine's not on. Let me use yours.
Okay,
Kim
so let me
sounds
move
better than
mine.
you do, Eric.
Yeah, let's go back and forth with it. Just hand it over.
No, I'll just put it here. Sorry, that was terrible.
Can
Is that
you
better?
Yeah, that's good. Go ahead.
can you hear me okay?
Yeah, but that looks a little weird.
Oh my
Yeah, I'm sorry.
gosh.
I'm sorry, Claudia. We're trying to be professional. Can you hear me okay though?
Yes.
I can hear you though. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, so
One of the things on your list was
one of the things was
yeah,
about dogs.
yeah.
And again, she didn't know that.
Nope,
But
not until that.
in my mind, I'm like, okay, she does like dogs,
Mhm.
likes playing with them and isn't just doing it because she's trying to, make me happy or
Right.
just like impress me. She was really like, I want this dog, I'm gonna keep it.
I wanted to steal him.
Yeah, she wanted to do that.
He was the best.
So
Yeah.
So, Eric, this is what did you think when you first met Kim? We know when you first saw her, and obviously she didn't have blue eyes and she wasn't 5'2". But what was your first when you first saw her? Did you already have a list when you first met Kim? Did you already have your list?
I did not. I did not have a list at that point. She was 16, I was 24.
Hmm.
So very illegal.
Oh,
Yes.
Very illegal.
But her parents were there.
wow.
Yeah, well, we were hanging out like in like pizza shop. We had a large group of folks who were part of a business team that her parents wanted her to get around the education. The people really stand up folks. That's how I got saved, is knowing people who have a life that are led by Jesus.
Hmm.
And it was just a great group of folks, a positive environment.
Yeah.
And they brought their daughter around. I'm like, well, that says a lot. If parents are willing to bring their kid around, that's excellent, right? That's
Yeah.
cool. And I did see her, but it's like she's 16. I'm like, look the other way. I mean, it's not even anything. But at that point, I was actually involved with
Yeah, you were.
somebody, and
Not the girl that was at the restaurant that night, though.
Okay.
Not the one I was
no,
jealous of.
no, but she
Do
was.
you remember
She
that
was
girl vividly
Her name
there,
was
Kim?
Sarah. I remember
yeah,
her.
yeah. I worked with her. She's a coworker, but she was on my business team. So it was just we were all
Yes.
just business partners, and it was nothing romantic. It was the fact that I actually had a second life that
Hmm.
was like different. That was the nightlife. That was the one where I was, going out 3 nights a week and all this stuff. Um, I was doing drugs. I mean, if I could be real, um, the fact is that I was trying to get away from that life,
Hmm.
and now looking back at it, God was pulling me away because He introduced certain people in my life,
Yeah.
certain men that I never had met before that knew what they were doing, where they were going, they had a piece about them, and I really wanted to make sure um, I had something I could lean on, and they were solid in what they were doing. What I was partying it up, it was so empty, and I was just like, I can't do
Yeah.
this anymore.
And they
I was
also
tired of it.
had amazing marriages that we looked up to.
Yes,
They were,
God centered.
yes, you could tell the marriages that were there were, they enjoyed being
Yeah,
together. They spoke well about each other. They weren't bashing each other behind closed doors. And that's what I wanted in a marriage. And my parents are still married. They've been married 45 years. I
Really?
didn't, I didn't always see, like, I see the flirtiness in them. They still make
yeah,
dirty comments about each other and gross me out, but
it's funny.
I can tell they still love each other. But I wanted that, but I wanted more. I wanted a best friend. I wanted to be
Respected.
I wanted to be loved. Which I didn't have in my other two relationships. I was in a very abusive relationship prior to Eric. And so I knew what I didn't want. And so when he came around and I saw the type of man that he was, I knew what I didn't want, and I saw that in him. I knew he was somebody that I wanted.
Yeah.
I think one of the things, I don't know what I said at the beginning, but my idea with Joy for a Lifetime, of course, was to say that people have different models. I don't think
Mhm.
they're, as much as we're Christians and we know the Bible says some things about the relationship between husbands and wives, but there isn't a model couple in the Bible. I can't say go to the book of Genesis and look at Adam and Eve and follow their life and That's the
Yeah.
key to a successful marriage. Or go look at Abraham and Sarah, or look at Joseph and Mary. It's not there. But I do think that we get our models sometimes from our parents, and sometimes those are, I want to have this type of relationship like my parents do, or I want to, as you said, have something that's like this but better, you know.
Hmm.
Or I want to make sure I don't do this, or I want to make sure I do this. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
and that's sort of what I'm hoping that people will share, and people will take away that there isn't, like a lot of things, there isn't a set pattern, you know, that you do this and the other person does this. It's not a
Right.
direct correlation because, again, everybody's different. But I think it is interesting to see how relationships have developed and what takeaways have been. Particularly, Eric, if you say that you came from a divorce, like assume from what you said, your parents were divorced.
Hmm.
So your aspect of your perception of what does a marriage look like, you know, maybe you have a whole lot of, I want to make sure I don't do this, you know,
Yes. Yes, you are 100%
or
correct.
looking at the couples that you looked at in the group you were in, I really like the way they're able to do that. Or
Yes.
even seeing that these people are, Kim, looking at your parents saying, these people have been together for 45 years and they still seem to like each other. They're not roommates, they're not just occupying the same space, you know, but
Yeah.
because one of my takeaways, and I was only married for 25 and a half years, and Eric, my husband was 24, almost 24 years older than me. And I sort of wonder, like, I guess if we could channel him back, I wonder what he thought when he first met me. Because apparently, from some conversations we had, he was aware of me a lot earlier than I was aware of him.
Hmm.
You know, and it's sort of like, were you scoping me out? I mean, what is that? You know, you were 24 years old when I was born.
Wow.
It's just like you're a grown adult, you know what I mean? Hence, I have a stepdaughter that's about 10 years younger than me, too. But,
Wow.
you know, so Eric, what were some of the things or the things on your list as you came up with that list? Were you
Yeah.
influenced at all by your parents' relationship or lack thereof?
Well, it actually was influenced greatly because I
Mhm.
didn't want to get married based on what happened at all. Like I didn't want to get married whatsoever. Um, I seen ruined marriages all the way through a lot of my family, but I was just coming to Florida and to see what happens. I was not planning on getting married. I'll be honest with you. I was 22, fresh in college, not doing that. But when I found that there's actually happy marriages, and I found there's marriages that aren't just married because we lived together or married because it was the next step, because that's all I knew. Like, oh, we dated for a while and then, we lived together and, oh, I guess we got to get married. Or, oh, we got a kid. Guess we got to get married. That I never wanted to just get married just for the sake of it. I
Right.
never had like this respect for marriage, like a covenant. I never did. But I always was like, it's just didn't make sense. I was just a logical person. So, but when I saw it and I saw there was actually fruit, because I like watching, what people do say and how they live. It's like a fruit inspection. I saw that they had fruit on the tree of marriage. But what really made the list was through the heartaches, the things that really got to me emotionally, the trust that was broken, the habits I saw that were created, because I dated a cocaine addict, and it was like I just did not want to deal with that anymore.
Yeah.
And the people that I saw that were women that we were around, they had their own relationship with God, and they were not headstrong, but they had their own strength about them. They weren't relying on their husband to
Mhm.
just do everything for them, or in the sense of like think for them or make sure that they're doing what they need to do. It's like not a babysitter job. It's like we have our own relationship when we meet there with him in the middle. That's where it started. Then it started to piece away. Well, I want someone who's like fun but doesn't mind chilling. I don't always like to go out, but I like to have a good time. But we want to maybe stay in and watch movies.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? We want 4 kids. I mean, these are things that I was like thinking, yeah, I do. I prayed about it from what I knew prayed, but everything I got in that list came from what I did not want,
Mhm.
because I had a relationship where parents were involved and it got ugly. right? And I'm like, I don't want them to be that involved, right? Or that where they have such a good relationship where it's like everything's got to be vetted through their parents. I'm like, I'm not dating the parents,
Yeah.
right? I remember getting like chastised and like vetted heavily because they were testing to know how much word I knew to date their daughter. I'm like, I guess I didn't qualify, and I didn't qualify. Apparently, I was like, okay, that was a godsend, thank God. But I was like, what is that? Anyway, parts of that came through, and I wanted to make sure. Like, I went to the emotional side of stuff. I'm like, what gets me really mad? What ticks me off, right? And I was like, I want to make sure she takes care of herself. Doesn't just not like not like in the sense of like she needs to be fit, but just she's not unhealthy. I guess that's the way to say it. Like, it's not the way to treat our temples, the way that God wants us to respect it. You see what I mean? It's not about a physical thing because it doesn't matter to me. Because when you have those relationships and they're empty, why would you want to keep going back to that? That's where I kept saying, I'm like, it didn't matter. There was a spiritual side that I missed. And I'm like, these are going to be a checklist that I know I'm not going to settle. Like, I'm not going to break a habit. Like, if there's everything on that list and she maybe smoked cigarettes, I'm like, no, I ain't doing it. I ain't doing it. Because I can't break that habit. I can't change her. I believe God had somebody for me.
And can I talk about the drug part of it?
Please.
So the crazy one thing on his list was somebody that's never done drugs. I dated a drug dealer, yet I had no your face. I had no inclination. Yes, that's one of
I knew him
those.
too.
One of those relationships. I never had any inclination to do any drugs of any kind, even though I could have had whatever I wanted from him.
Yeah.
I didn't partake. I didn't want to feel out of control of my own body. And I think that goes back to being sexually abused when I was younger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I didn't want to put anything in my body to where I wasn't in control. So when I look back at that God moment of that being on his list and me being so headstrong when I was dating this other guy, I was like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to do cocaine. I'm not going to smoke marijuana, whatever else you have. I'm not doing it. So that's, I feel like totally a God thing where it was like, no.
Yeah. Because I got caught up in it by association.
Yeah.
It was at parties and everything. I dabbled in almost every drug, right? I dabbled, right? My drug of choice was ecstasy back then. But one night before my graduation of college, I took 8 pills in 12 hours. Bless God that I'm still here today.
Yeah.
Because that night, the dealer, he was the guy who had them. He came to my house and had a bag of them. He's like, I got more at my house. So we go in his Camaro across Howard Franklin Bridge, high as a kite, 120 miles an hour over that bridge. And again, those things just remind me, I'm like, God had angels on me at that point. But that night, that next day, I got so sick. I got 104-degree temperature, fever blisters all in my mouth. I hated life. I never touched anything of substance after that day because it made me sick. That was my last straw. I'm like, I'm done. I didn't like alcohol anyway. I already stopped that. Waste of time. And it was like, why am I doing this? Why am I doing this? And I stopped it myself. I wasn't like some saved Christian. It was like, I just didn't like feeling like crap. And then spending money on it. Now I'm really worse. It's like going to the strip club. Why go there?
Came out of nowhere.
I'm sorry.
Stop.
Sorry, Claudia. It's just, why would I want to do that? It's empty. Sorry.
That was actually another point, though, and something I wanted in a spouse. And it's something that I noticed in you was how you treated women. That you weren't lusting over women. You weren't like having the wandering eye, so to speak. And that was something very important to me because in one of my relationships, I was compared to any woman that walked by. He would say, why can't you look like that? Why don't you do this to look like that? Or whatever it was. And he didn't do that, to the point where if a scene came on TV, he would close his eyes or look away. He would do whatever he needed to make me feel comfortable. And it wasn't for me. He did it for his own relationship with God because lust of the eye. And so that's just the type of man that he is. And when I saw that, I fell more in love with him because of the comfort that gave me as somebody that has been raped, sexually abused, physically abused. That was something very important to me, and I think that that gave us a huge foundation for our marriage of safety.
Yeah. And it wasn't like we were telling each other this.
No.
These are just things that we were just doing as habit that
Yeah.
I just created. I knew how weak I was as a man. I'm like, I gotta stop creating these images. So I knew what I had to do.
Yeah.
To get myself out of it. Still not perfect, but it's like I had to create a habit opposite of what I knew was going to create some temptation.
Mm-hmm.
And that it just happened to be that was something that she needed out of a husband, because
It's not
if I
just
didn't have
something
that
that
habit,
happened. It's a God thing, Eric. It's
It
not
is.
well, I'm
just
just saying, like at that point, I didn't know it was a God thing. It
Yeah.
was me just saying, like, if I want to change how I
Mhm.
see a woman, I got to change when I see women and how I see them in what realm.
Yeah.
Right? Like the movies, the magazines, anything really. It didn't matter. Go to the beach, you name it. I'm like, I gotta get myself. What my roommate would have parties, and what I would do, I would lock myself in my room with my dog,
Dexter.
throw on, I think it was South Park, something stupid, like completely out of the realm of anything sexual, and it was like, and I went to bed because I knew if I was out in the realm of everything, I just like, no, I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah.
And it was lonely, I'm not gonna lie. That's why I love the dog. But it was like I just had this urge to
People,
say I want something more.
you have to know yourself. I say that I struggle with an addiction to Oreos.
Mm.
I
What's that?
cannot
Oreos.
eat
Oh, Oreos. Okay.
Oreos. You know, the little cookies that
Yeah, I'm
chocolate
addicted
with
too.
the little,
I am too. Yes, ma'am.
and I can buy Oreos, and as long as I have the package in the pantry unopened, the Oreos could stay there for 6 months. They could stay there for 6 years probably.
Right.
But once I open the package,
That's it. Yep.
I'm going to eat the whole thing.
Milk?
I'm going to eat the whole thing.
You get milk?
So, no, I don't. I just started getting milk recently. I still have never had Oreos and milk because I think milk is for cows. And humans are the only ones that are drinking other animals' milk. And then for a lifetime, no. I use milk. I like ice cream. I do not pour a glass of milk. I drink hot chocolate.
Yes.
You can do
And
oatmeal.
I used to eat ginger snaps with milk.
Mm.
Oh,
Dip them in milk because you know how hard ginger snaps are. But even now, I still eat ginger snaps, but not with milk.
mm-mm.
My thing was, like you said, you know what your tendencies are, and it could be anything. I mean, we're talking about women, or women could have, because the other thing too is a couple things that you all have made me think of. One, a lot of women have been in relationships like you've been in, Kim, where, and not just relationships, there's a whole thing in society about how women should look. I mean, that's why we're always struggling with our weight, and there's always, and I've gone, because I struggle with my weight, and I've gone to some of these doctors that have the little plan where you can lose however many pounds it is. You get a B12 shot and you take these pills so you're not hungry and you lose weight. And I have been in there before and seen women that look perfectly healthy, but they've gained 3 pounds, so they're back,
Wow.
and it's like,
Yeah.
or you see the women that risk their health, they get bust implants, all kinds of, there's a lot of pressure on women
Yeah.
to look a certain way and that pressure is not on men the way it is on women. It really isn't. So,
No.
and we go through a lot of that. And one of my takeaways from life, I guess, is I think it's very important that women in particular have a relationship with Jesus Christ and know who God says they are, and
Mhm.
that, well, who God says you are is far superior to what a person here on earth says you are,
Yes.
because
Right.
that changes with, like the weather,
Yeah.
like springtime, summertime, and And that is the only person, that's the only relationship that's going to be for a lifetime. I
Yeah.
say joy for a lifetime, but people like myself, like I'm a widow, my husband died in 2010, and you never know when, because I that's why I say you should live with no regrets, because you never know when that last time is coming. And I
Right.
can say that the last time, and this is not anything other than one of my takeaways from watching my parents' marriage, was I thought it was important to tell my husband that I loved him every day.
Mm,
And maybe several times a day. But sometimes saying I love you was not an expression of emotion as much as it was an expression of reminding me that I love him. So
right.
when somebody does something and you're really annoyed, it's almost like I had a conversation with someone today, and she's been divorced a couple of times, and she was saying, as she's back in the dating world, one of her deal breakers is if the man says that if he trashes his ex-wife.
Mm,
They were married for 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you think that he was the reason it was all him, and you were the innocent. And again, I think things change, but at some point in time, you love that person. You know what I
Right.
mean?
yeah.
That's right.
We're not in a society here, for the most part, where we had arranged marriages, but
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
love that person. So maybe some things changed or whatever. When my two things, if people don't like, listen to this, they have a problem with dogs and they have a problem with babies and children, they have
Interesting.
a problem, you
Yes.
Oh,
know?
I agree with
Just like
that.
when you walk your dog, have you ever walked your dog and there's another person and your dog seems like they want to attack that person, and that person is not even doing anything. That
yeah.
person's walking down the side, something that they sense about that person.
Yeah.
I trust the dog's instincts.
Agreed.
It's like what Dexter did with the cable guy.
Totally.
So Dexter,
In our first apartment
yes,
after
he
being married.
was 75
He's not bad.
pounds. He wasn't a like full blown shepherd, but he had never attacked anyone. Like the most gentle dog I
Never
had
seen him
ever met.
growl. Never seen him bark.
Nothing. Like he looked intimidating, but he was a baby. So we had just got married in our first apartment and we needed to get the internet cable installed in our apartment. He was at work. I was home by myself. The guy knocks on the door, sees Dexter, and he's like, "Oh God." You could tell he was nervous. And I was like, "No, he's fine. He won't. He's friendly." The guy puts his boot on our door frame to walk inside of our apartment, and Dexter puts his two front paws on this guy's chest, like
Yeah.
right here, and was growling at him. And I was shocked because I had never seen him do this before. And the guy's freaking out, and I was like,
Mhm.
okay. So I got Dexter down, and it made me think. I'm like, okay, who are you?
Mm-hmm.
Because my dog doesn't act like this. You've done something that he doesn't like, and he can sense it. He would not let him come in between us. So Dexter stayed between me and this guy the entire time he was in the apartment.
Yep.
And so I had to go sign the contract at the end, and he tried to hand it to me, and he was growling. And I said, put it on the table. I'll pick it up and I'll sign it, and then whatever. But
Never happened again.
he never did it with anybody else. So this guy, I don't know what he's done, but I trusted Dexter's judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just
She's a dog lover.
interesting.
Mm-hmm.
It's just interesting. As I said about these relationships, particularly like I said with women, and I'm sure there's some issues that men, deal with. 'Cause men are so different. I mean, I listened to a podcast that's called Hardly Initiated, and it's two single guys in the Atlanta area, and they have a variety of guests on. But one of the things that they talk about is how a lot of guys are very focused on sex. And it's okay. I think it's interesting. It's still okay for them to sleep around with a lot of women, but they want a woman who hasn't been with anybody. It's just
Mm-hmm.
like
The double standard
what's up with
of
that, guys?
it's okay for a guy to sleep around, but
Yeah.
if we do it, we're
Isn't
considered a
there a
whore.
song that Taylor Swift has?
Oh yeah, like a man. It's like if I was a man,
Yeah.
I would have this, the
Yeah.
CEO job, all these things, but because she's a woman,
Yeah.
we get looked at differently, and we're a whore if
It's
we
still,
sleep
it's
around.
still, it's still different. I mean, even today, that you hear the statistics about the differences in pay and all kinds of things. And as much as, I have this hyphenated name because I was a part of the little women's lib where I shouldn't have to give up my last name just because I got married. Why didn't you give up your last name and all that? And I didn't ask my husband because there are couples where they've both taken on each other's last name. Have you seen those couples?
Yes, I have.
I haven't. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some like that too. And then there are people, I had a friend who got married and she just kept her maiden name. And I remember thinking, so like, this is back in the day when people sent Christmas cards out. So do you send a card to Susie Jane and John Smith? But
Yeah.
they're married.
Yeah.
That just seems sort of weird too.
Yeah.
But going back to people having independence, there's something to be said, and I don't know, Kim, what your thought process is, but because my husband was older and he was from a different generation than mine, he thought that women should be treated differently as in with respect. And even a friend of mine now thinks that a man's role is to provide and protect his wife. And as opposed to my generation, I think we thought that we were just, both of us were equal and we both bring 50% to, well, I don't want to say 50% because I think that's wrong. I think we both bring, let's say, 100% to the table.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Because I spoke with a woman today on my job and she said her husband died last year, I think like about maybe 4 to 6 months ago. And I work with insurance. She doesn't know anything about insurance because her husband handled all of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that there were men, and maybe there are still some today, but there was a generation where a man thought that was his responsibility to take care of the finances and all of that. And the woman felt like that was his role as well. And so she didn't know anything about it, no more than he would know anything. If they had a family of 4 children and something happened to her, he wouldn't have any clue as to how to prepare meals or do laundry or anything. So they both were in the dark, about certain things. But there are some things I think that women do. I know I liked, once I got over the initial, I can open the door for myself. That was me. Because what do you think I do when I'm by myself? Obviously, I can open the door. I didn't look at it as a respect kind of, let me do this for you. I think women do like to be treated a little differently. Don't you,
Yeah,
Kim?
I do. I agree with that. I think that chivalry should not be dead. And I know the independent woman of today they think they can do it themselves. And God bless them. I praise that. I think that, my cousins, well, 2 of my cousins are 30 and 34. They're not married. And they're successful teachers, principals of schools, and they take care of themselves. But I think that biblically, I think that, women should be treated the way that you were describing, him being chivalrous and, taking care of me. But I also have a role in that to be the submissive wife. And it isn't about power or being powerless. I see it as a partnership.
Empowerment.
Yes. And I hate the word submission because I feel like people just, automatically assume that I'm some passive, oh, whatever you want, honey. No, I'm not. If you've ever met me, you know that is not me at all.
Nope.
But I think that there's power in unity, and there's a role for marriage. Now, do I know how to pay all the bills? Absolutely not. Could I figure it out? Yes, I could. Does he know how to cook? Not the best, but he's figured it out when I've been sick or had babies or whatever. He's a better parent than I am. So let me finish. So like we go out places, like say I go out for a ladies' night, right? and we're with 5 or 6 other moms, and they're getting texts from their husbands or their children. Dad's doing this, dad's burning this, or the husband's asking, where are the band-aids, where is this? I don't hear a peep because he has it under control. He is, and it's a great thing, but also I'm like, can you need me a little bit? Like, can you just send me a message that maybe you're not holding it all together without me? But I have no, like, he's a great
Kim, I
dad.
wouldn't worry about it. Everybody, I think, as with people, everybody brings different things to the table. Um, some of them are skills that people have that the other person doesn't have. The Bible says it's not good for man to be alone. And I
Mhm.
think that that works for marriage as well as just, I talk about this environment that we're in now as far as people working from home and all that remote stuff and the ability to do church at home by yourself because you can
Right.
watch it online. I think that whole principle of it's not good to be alone is sort of in all types of scenarios. But I guess I say because you talk about Eric that way, I may have shared that my husband basically raised our children. I mean, I continued to work. My husband was older, he was retired, and he liked the idea. So I don't know I mean, I know things about like potty training, for example. If a young woman said, "Oh, I'm really having struggling with this potty training. Do you have any?" Honestly, at age, however old I am, let's say 68, you know what I would say? I'm sure you can go on YouTube and see some videos.
Yeah.
I know what the end goal is,
Hmm.
but I don't have a single story I can tell you about potty training. I don't
Mm-mm.
know how my husband did that. My husband got my children get, to learn how to eat. I remember I used to work at I worked at a children's home, and we had a daycare center that had children from like 6 months to five, fifth grade. They had an after school program. And I remember going down there sometimes and seeing, I don't know what age it is, but when you're first learning how to eat, like with the utensils,
Hmm.
Yeah.
oh, they couldn't pay me. Because children are messy. There's food
Yes.
all over the place. No, if I had to work there, I would work with the babies, the
Yes.
ones that they sleep and poop and cry, and I can deal with them all
You
day
feed them
long.
a bottle and they're happy.
Yeah,
Done.
mobile.
Exactly. Wake up
Hmm.
from the nap, you rock them a little bit, they go back to sleep. I'm
Mm,
there.
Perfect.
yeah.
The
They
ones that are
cuddle.
out moving around,
Hmm.
No.
pass. But some people have that ability. They like that. And my children sometimes say that I'm I was maybe better with my children as they got older, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But I think there's that partnership and it's realizing who has strength. My husband cooked all the time because he was home. He cooked dinner and everything and he cooked pretty well. And I
Yeah.
do know how to cook. I mean, it's not like if
Yeah.
he was gone, then we're just, we had to get carry
Yeah.
out or something like
Yeah.
that, or
Yeah.
eat TV dinners or whatever it is. But
Yeah. We have friends
I
that do.
think it's okay for you all to compliment each other, but I do think for the standpoint of women, because statistics say that women at some point in time are probably going to be on their own because women still outlive men.
Hmm.
So it really is a good idea for a woman and a man knowing that to say, listen, honey,
Mhm.
we never know what's going to happen. I have a book or something. Let me show you how
Yeah.
this works. So
Yeah.
you're not left in the dark because the other part, between the grief that you might be going through that has you in a cloud
Hmm.
and the fact that people will take advantage of you,
Yes. I.
then you put all that together and it would be good. One of the takeaways I had, I used to work in the children with special needs community, right?
Yeah.
And one of the takeaways is there was a book that one of the insurance companies I worked with had that you were to give to a caregiver if something
Mm.
happened to you that would tell you things about this child, like maybe their favorite colors, maybe if they had rich bedtime rituals and stuff like that, that I think
Yeah.
everybody could benefit from, you
Yeah.
know? who the doctors are, that kind of thing, all in a place, and you periodically update it so
Mhm.
that it's going to be traumatic enough, let's say, if that child has lost one of their parents that, took care,
Yes.
but at least everything is not,
Lost.
chaotic because you have that
Yeah.
guide. And that's one of those things that I think every parent could take away as, that's not a bad idea,
And
parents of four.
I saw that with my grandmother because she was a widow at 50, no,
45.
46.
Yeah.
So my grandfather passed away at 53 with cancer. And so she's been a
Mhm.
widow now for over 40, no, 36 years. How old am I?
She's 40,
36.
40 years.
So 36 years. He died when I was one. Anyways, so he did. He died when I was one. Whatever. I have the ages wrong. Point is, she was a stay-at-home mom. She of four kids. She never had a job. This is a different time and a different,
Mhm.
generation. And so she had to go back to work. She had to figure out the finances, all these things, and have this second life. She never remarried. She never had that dependency on someone else. And so, except for her kids, my uncles and my mom helped tremendously, and they still do. Um, but that's probably one of my biggest fears out of life is losing him. Not necessarily young, but whenever it does happen, um, I always say I want to go first because I don't want to live in a
Everybody
world
does.
without him. I know everybody does, and
Everybody
that's
does. I remember
like,
I wanted to die before my parents died.
oh, that's a
Wow.
When I was younger, when you're a child, you don't want your parents to die. Plus you think they'll live forever kind of thing. And so it's,
yeah. And
and the
neither one
same
of us
thing is
have
true with your
experienced.
spouse.
Yeah, we haven't experienced that. Both of our parents are still here, so on both sides, but
Mhm.
um and yeah, I don't want to think about that, even though it's something we do need to plan for and think about with all those things, life insurance and those things. But
In a perfect world too, that's not doing life alone is why um it's good to have some friends, some
mhm,
support people, because like everything else, and having gone through, I lost my parents and I lost my spouse. I know that initially a couple things usually go on. One, you're in some kind of funk because you don't know what's going on, but well, I don't know. I try to keep it moving, and I don't want to be the person who's in bed with the pillows and the
yeah,
blanket pulled up over my head like I, can't move. And and I trust God and all, but it's hard. But after the first week or so, now everybody's gone, and
mhm,
you're sort of coming. The anesthesia is wearing off now, and you're starting to feel pain. And that's
yeah,
when I think it really helps to have people around to check on you and see,
Yeah.
because people try to act like it's like a disaster. If we have a hurricane, we'll be on the news and everybody will show all this stuff. And now that it's 3 weeks later or 3 months later, they've moved on to the next disaster.
yep,
Well, nobody came to your home and waved a magic wand and now things are fine.
right,
And so there should be some people around you to say what's happening. I
yeah,
still care about you. What can I do for you? As
yeah,
you start to figure out what you can do for me. You know what I mean? Because
yeah. Just having that community. We went through that with the loss of our children, and we've experienced both sides of that where we didn't have community and then we did. And so
Mhm,
we know what it's like for the first week to have everybody there and then poof, everybody's gone. People
mhm,
don't aren't calling anymore, aren't texting. And then we have the flip side where we have friends that still remember our children's birthdays and still will send us messages and, hey, how are you
Yeah.
doing? Any questions like that, where to have community like that is priceless. Whatever you're going through, whether it's having a baby, whether it's the loss of a spouse, whether it's a sickness, like when I had surgery and had my tumor taken out, you have to have community around you to build you back up and to be there and to lift you up until you can do it on your own. but it's also important for you to be that community for other people,
Yes.
because you can't just take and expect people to show up for you if you haven't shown up for somebody else.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's
And
something that we've been able to do.
I think too, when you experience it, you have a lot better feel for what
Mhm.
it's like. People, I don't think that everybody intentionally goes about doing their, I mean, especially in the grief situation, there's always stuff, I
Right.
don't know, really know what to say. I don't know. And they don't understand that sometimes just somebody being there, not
Hmm.
having a whole conversation about this, that, and blah, 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 but just them being there. Or maybe
Right.
just saying, hey, let's go to the movies. You know what I mean? Just something, but people, which
Yeah.
brings me back, I guess, to the final thing that I want to mention or ask you about today, and that's the intentionality. You know,
Mhm.
as you said, being intentional about following up with people and that type of thing. I think that's one of the keys to the marriage. Like I said, I said the thing about my husband and I love you, but I
Mhm.
think you have to, if you want your marriage to have that joy for a lifetime and that happily ever after, you have to do some things intentionally. It's not
Yeah.
just going to
Happen.
be
It's not
off.
just going to happen. Right.
Yep.
Some
Just
things that
because
we
you're in the same
do.
place, you just don't fall in love more, you
Yeah.
know?
I think I think it's very important to have that intentionality. Some of the things that we do are make sure that we have time together every day, whether it's 30
You
minutes
have
to
what?
2 hours. Oh, just time together. So whether we're just watching a show or we're watching a video or talking or whatever it is, it's time that isn't interrupted by kids or, whatever. That time's usually like at night where we just cuddle on our bed, we hang out, we watch a show together. We always kiss each other goodnight. That's something that's always been important to
have
us.
you ever gone
Incomical.
to bed angry with each other?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't believe in, I would say in the beginning of our marriage I didn't want to do that, but sometimes you need the space, you need the time to just cool off. And
Because
when
I am
you
tired, and then if I'm gonna
yeah,
try to have a conversation so tired it's gonna be worthless, and try to fight the fact that I have to not be mad, go to bed. I get
yeah,
that,
no,
but it didn't work for us.
it didn't. We've gone to bed mad, but you know what? Like,
Mercies come new in the morning.
right. There's one thing I will say this, and this can be a takeaway for somebody. Life is too short to stay pissed off at the person that you love the most.
Yes.
Put your big girl panties on, forgive your spouse, and get over it, because they're not doing things intentional to make you mad. We don't stay in a fight long. It's something that I vowed in the beginning of our marriage that I am not going to let an argument linger. I'm not going to stay mad at him for 5 days. One, because he's too good looking to stay mad at for that long. And he's my best friend. I need somebody to laugh with, and I don't want to stay mad at him. So we say our sorries, we talk about it, and we move on.
Yeah.
If you want a good marriage, if you want a marriage that's going to last, you're going to have to stop being petty, and you're going to have to learn how to talk to each other and communicate and forgive. That's my giveaway, takeaway, however you want to say it.
It didn't come overnight, though.
No, not at all. I used to be mad at you and let it linger. I would hold on to things for a long time. And I just realized that it's not worth the time, or just wasn't worth it. Like, what for what? To be
Be
right?
right.
No, that's not worth it to me. Like, I can admit when I'm wrong. I can say sorry. That's a big thing. That's another one in marriage. You have to be able to admit when you're wrong in a situation.
That's hard for me to do.
I wasn't going to point that out, but you can call yourself out.
Hard for you to what? To say you're sorry?
That he's, yeah.
Now I'm wrong, and I'm sorry. Not. I'm going to say I apologize. If I'm truly, like, honestly, like, oh crap, I really didn't mean that, I'll say it as fast as possible. But if I have a point I want to make, and she don't want to hear it, I'm going to keep telling her
Mm-hmm.
until I tell it,
Mm-hmm.
even though it makes it worse.
Yep.
But
Awesome.
the thing is that there will be an apology. But when I know that my heart was in the right place, but I said it wrong,
Yeah.
that's easy to apologize for. But when I don't, I like to say I admit I'm wrong. Is like when there's a point that I really wanted to make, and I know I was wrong. she doesn't rub it in. She just
No.
lets me figure it out and simmer in it
Hmm.
because she knows it's hell. But the thing is, it's like I let it. We have to separate. We do our own thing. We
Yeah.
figured it out. But that even happens now.
Hmm.
Like we're not perfect, but there's times that we're like, all right, we know when to just cool it off.
Yeah.
And when we come back together, we're like, we just honestly just let it go. Let the Holy Spirit deal with it.
It's literally forgiven and forgotten. I don't see the point, and I try really hard, and I know I'm not perfect at it, where you bring stuff up from past fights, or you bring stuff up from 5 years, 10
3
years,
years
15
ago.
years ago. It's not worth it. I think that, God forgave you for all the things you've done.
Yeah.
I don't think it's fair to hold a human to a standard that they're supposed to be perfect. They're not. And if I want to be forgiven by him, then I need to forgive too. And so I never wanted to be that wife. I never wanted to be that bitter, nagging wife.
Always miserable.
Yeah, no, I never wanted that. And I think that communication is key. Talking it out is key. Obviously, it didn't happen overnight, like you said. You know, communicate. I just say that communication. If you're open and you can talk about what hurt you, what upset you, why it bothered you, and you can have that conversation as calmly, then I think that's the most important thing. Again, we're not perfect. Things get heated, things get said, but we forgive quickly and we move on.
Do you throw
Yeah.
things?
What?
Do you throw things?
Oh, no, I throw myself. I used to punch holes in walls. I have quite the temper.
You haven't thrown things in a while.
I haven't I don't.
It doesn't get there anymore.
No.
Like she's thrown things. I've not gotten so much to punch
No.
a human or anything.
I've
I've
punched.
punched like inanimate objects, but a lot of times I'm more mad at myself than I am at her.
Yeah.
But we've never got to the point where, again, we know when to walk away. I guess that's what we know.
But we had to.
Yeah, never had that.
No, we've never had
But
that.
we've had like loud arguments. But the
Yeah.
fact is, like, all right, we just need to chip. We just need to walk away.
And
Even though I want to prove a point.
That took a long time because for a while he would want to finish the fight. And I need space. I need you to leave me alone for 5 minutes.
And I need to finish.
I know. And that took communication. It took a lot of fights to figure that out. And like I said, we're not perfect, but I would say the amount of fights that we have are like very minimal.
And usually caused by me.
I wasn't going to say that. And they're usually over.
You said they're
usually caused by me.
Oh.
And I said I wasn't going to point that out, but they're mostly over. They're mostly over parenting. They're mostly over parenting things and how we parent our children.
But it's the way I deliver.
Yes.
It's how I deliver and how I have to learn how to communicate better. I learned that
it's a process, obviously it's a process, and people, that's the other thing, we're always changing too.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we can appreciate honesty too. Sometimes if we spend the time to communicate and then we try to understand the other person's perspective, because again, we come from different backgrounds, you know what I mean? So,
and he doesn't always know what's going to set me off or what's going to, or what's going to set him off, so like early on he would like if I'm called woman, I go to a new level of rage because that's what my ex used to say to me. And so I told him very quickly, don't ever say that to me because you will see a side of me you won't like. So like those things, you have to know what trigger each other, and you just have to not be a jerk to try to trigger those things, because I just think that's immature if you know what's going to set that person off. And then if you do that, that's just wrong. And you're just looking for a fight at that point.
Yeah.
I think
you never tell the person that this is a trigger that they don't know. It's not like it's and that's why the honesty and also feeling comfortable enough in the relationship that you can trust the other person to not say, well, that's stupid. You know what I mean?
Right. Yes.
Because sometimes people do that. You have to be you have to get to a comfort level where, like I said, you can be transparent and
Mhm.
vulnerable and
Yep.
know that you'll still be okay. It's like when
Right.
you have a friend, you can tell a friend that you don't look good in that dress. And your friend knows you're telling them that because you care about them,
Yes.
not
Knowing their
because
heart. Hmm.
No.
That's, yeah, I would say that would be the final piece. Like, why we don't stay mad at each other is because we know each other's hearts. We know that we love each other. And at the end of the day,
Life is already stressful, man.
well, but divorce isn't on the table. That's something that
mm,
is never
that's not an
threatened.
option.
It's not an option. We're stuck together. So we need to either that's another, like, don't let it linger. Like, why?
Yeah.
We're stuck together forever. So
Yeah.
let's move on and have fun.
Yeah. If I could just mention one thing about the submission part, kind of, give you an idea. Sorry.
You said one thing.
One, go.
The submission.
Quick.
I'm sorry. The part that I got to make sure I want to say, because what happens in our relationship, there's already a foundation of no quit, but it's also we're each other's safe place.
Hmm.
If all hell breaks loose, which it does, if everything else in the world is crumbling down, we knew for a fact we could come home to each other.
Right.
And if we're coming home to a battle, that just makes it worse.
Right.
Doesn't mean it has to be perfect, but at least we know it's like, all right, if everything else is going haywire, she was my rock at times. Then there's times that I got to be a rock for her.
Hmm.
It goes back and forth. But the fact is that what we realize is that we both need to individually be working on ourselves and our identities in Christ.
Yep.
To help each other out in those moments. Because we keep relying on other people in our lives, or maybe relationships and other things that are affecting us and
Yep.
our image. So when we'd come together, where did that come from? We would have an argument like, who told you that?
Yeah.
But she'd see me as the one saying it because
Hmm.
of how I said it. And it would just come out, it came through a roundabout conversation of her thinking of that, who she was. And it was like, wait a minute, that wasn't me. And then you start thinking, oh, okay, let's just take a minute, take a breath, let's go back.
Yeah.
But I have to tell you that one thing I had to be careful of, because when we got married, we did want to have Kim to be a stay-at-home mom. That was it. That was in the list, that she wanted to raise our kids, homeschool, all those things. By design, we're like, okay, she's going to have more time with the kids and more opportunity to learn. Well, what would happen is that I would come in, I'd want to do something with the kids, but she'd say, but no, don't do that. That's how they do this. I'm like, I need to learn. It's like, well, I'm telling you how to do it. I'm like, okay, that's not how I learn. I need to mess up. I need to say, don't tell him like that. Don't yell at him. I'm like, well, this is why you can see it just go back and forth. She's like, I spend all day with him. Yes, you do. But I need to do this myself, because if I act the way you want me to act, I'm not me. You see what I mean? I got to be a dad. And it
Mhm.
takes that back and forth to be like, okay, we don't agree with everything. But however, we have to make sure we talk about a lot of stuff. We have to, especially with the kids.
You have to be on
But
the same page.
I
Hmm.
mean, I can't tell you the amount of arguments that were not about kids,
There's not many.
or the way we raise, or things that we're doing.
Hmm.
Just because, again, we are so intentional with our parenting as well.
Yeah.
We
Hmm.
love our marriage, and that's one thing that we stay true. Kids already know this is number one.
Yeah.
Like besides Jesus, this is the first relationship.
Yep.
They're second.
Yep.
Like her relationship with the kids is second behind mine.
Yes.
Same thing. A lot of people don't agree with that. Well, I need to take care of the kids. They'll take
Kids
care.
first. Kids first.
Well, if that's the case, that I don't have any advice for you, because I can't
In a
handle a
perfect
kid.
world, at some point the kids will be gone and you'll still be
Right.
stuck with each other, right?
Right. And if you're just focused on the kids first, then you're not going to have a
But
relationship at the end of the day for
but think
that.
about it, what we're building for them too when
Yeah.
they get married.
Hmm.
Hmm.
The
Like we're
example.
building an example that this is a union with God in the middle of
Hmm.
it, because
Hmm.
not that they're not part, but they're something that is going to have to leave us.
Yeah.
Biblically saying,
Hmm.
submission to me is the power that I get. That once she's actually bought into my vision, that biblically speaking, it works only if she's in it with me.
Hmm.
if she's not submitted to the vision or the mission, it doesn't work. It's not going to have the power or the, you know, all the things that we want, the anointing that we want. We have found that, like, we have a vision, but we can be like going two different ways about it. The part that I know that I cannot do life without is that if she's telling me one thing and I go against what she says, it's going to fail every time. And I'm just going to regret it every time. So now it's like conversations go like, you need to tell me when you really don't want to hurt my feelings. Like, I don't care if you hurt my feelings. I want you to tell me the truth.
Yeah.
Because it's not like she was lying to me. She was looking out for my poor
Mhm.
self-image. And that's a big thing for men, because you're like, I don't want to crush his ego, which a woman could crush it just like that in a moment. Because her words mean more than anybody else in this world. Right? So if I don't have her backing or her love, there's no mission. There isn't. There's no sub
I
to
think
mission
that's a
with. Right?
communication issue, though, where
Right.
because men and women are different, I don't think that women sometimes understand how fragile men's egos are, because men have this whole persona of being so macho that I know I used to have a relationship with this gentleman that I thought was very, very self-sufficient. He made something for me. I don't know, some pickles, let's say, bread and butter pickles. And I know nothing at all, just like I don't know about potty training. I don't know anything at all about canning and things. I just know. But it was important to him that I liked them. And I thought, really? I mean, you really care? I mean, to me, it's, neither here nor there. If I made you some chocolate chip cookies, I mean, I would hope you liked them. But if you didn't like them,
That's fine.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
wouldn't make them again. You know what I mean? Because to me, that just seems like it's not that big of a deal,
Yeah.
And this is a grown man, it's not your son who's 7. But men are, it's just interesting how men are, that again, if it's not communicated, just like women like little things. I know that there are women, I guess, that like, a man that gives them a car, that gives them this huge, 15-carat ring and all that. But I think a lot of women are just happy if the man says, I love you,
hmm
or just, maybe bring
Leave
something
her a
home,
note.
a flower. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's little
Yeah.
stuff. It's not
Yeah.
that flashy stuff, because the flashy stuff also makes you think then, okay, so what did he do?
Yeah. I highly
Then,
recommend The 5 Love Languages. Greg
Yes.
Chapman.
It's a good book.
Gary
you're
Chapman.
right, because
Very
everybody's different. Gary Chapman.
hmm Yes. That was one of our big
Oh,
fights in the beginning of our marriage. That's another
what?
story.
About the car or the diamond ring?
About the
No,
way to fill our love tanks.
about love
Oh,
languages. Because I came from a house that my dad showered my mom and me with gifts for every holiday.
mhm.
And so when I got married, I assumed that every man was that
The
way.
way it works.
And even my ex-boyfriends were the same way. And so I just assumed. And so when we got married and our first birthday, first Christmas, I'm like, okay. I was really hurt, but I didn't say anything for a long time. And finally that conversation was had and it got better. And it, like you said, doesn't have to be the extravagant 5-carat diamond ring. It's a note in the morning telling me he loves me and he's thinking about me, or a bag of Skittles because I love candy, or
Exactly.
little things, just to show intentionality that he's thinking about me, and that my love language is important to him. So, and same thing the other way, his is acts of service. And so knowing that clutter bothers him, knowing that the dishes in the sink or whatever, these little acts, making his lunch or making
Mhm.
sure his clothes are done, things like that help him make him feel loved and cared for. So
Words.
It goes back to communication.
communication.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know
that is
what?
definitely a key.
I
Um,
am going to conclude today's, I started to say session, what this was and how does that make you feel? Tell me more about that. And how did you feel when that happened? But it's not that. But the next time I talk to you all, one of the things I'll tell you that I'm going to tell you, ask you about is challenges in your relationship and
Oh
how
yeah,
you've overcome those challenges.
so good.
But that's for another episode of Joy for a Lifetime.